Labs.
Goodbye, football. Hello, NASCAR. It's Racing Roots with Hamm on 550 and 92.9 WAME.
Welcome to Racing Roots with Hamm.
If you don't know our host, David Hamm, he's a 25-year NASCAR veteran, engine builder, and jackman.
Live every Monday evening, we have a new guest
From the racing world with their stories, their paths,
their racing roots.
Now here's our host, David Hamm.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Racing Roots with Hamm on this fine, beautiful day. And we got our good buddy here, Rick Houston, all the way in. All right, so first of all, I need to introduce you as the esteemed family of Houstons, right? You know, because y'all are all over Hickory and these areas.
No. We are no relation. We're not closely enough. We're not closely related enough to borrow money from each other.
What about the one where they say, Houston, we have a problem?
Now that... Actually, as a matter of fact, I am related to Sam Houston.
Oh.
The first governor of Texas.
Okay.
Texas. So, yes, Houston. Yeah. And David, listen, I have not heard that. Houston, we've had a problem thing. I've never heard that before.
That's a first
especially since I'm a NASA guy and I've written some about NASA. You know, once people make the connection that I'm a space geek and my name is Houston, they think it's the funniest thing. So, you know, join the club, David.
Yeah, join the club. There's nothing new on you.
We should have
there.
T-shirts.
We should. I mean, I was stalking, looking on your Facebook, and I saw the pictures of you with there's the Kennedy, I don't know if it's Kennedy Space Center or wherever it was. That looked pretty cool.
Yeah. I have written some books about the space shuttle, and I also wrote one about the guys who worked in mission control during the Apollo program. Mm-hmm. So, I've gotten to do some pretty cool stuff. Gotten my picture taken on board the space shuttle in mission control and all that kind of stuff.
It's an inside joke I'm laughing about because my wife this weekend, and I'll introduce you here in just a second, sorry.
Okay.
I'm supposed to introduce her first and foremost.
Says who?
My wife, Traci.
Says whom?
Well, I'm trying to keep from, the getting in trouble.
Yeah.
The shovel and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, all right, so Bryson's over here to my right.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
And then Kristen Wilson's over here to my left. And so welcome to the show, y'all, and thanks for coming in and helping out as usual.
So the inside joke is what?
So we were down on the beach, Daytona Beach. They had a rocket launch.
Uh-huh.
And so my wife's like, it's the shuttle. The shuttle's taking off.
I mean,
dear.
I didn't know.
Oh, dear.
I was just excited to see it. It was something you need to experience watching it because we got to see it at night.
Yeah.
So we were, 130 miles away? Is that right?
No.
I thought you said that's how far we were.
It's probably about an hour.
It's an
I
hour.
would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we were
about 60.
I didn't think we would be able to see very much, but I was proven wrong.
Oh yeah. I got to see the last space shuttle launch, which was pretty cool. Got to see it from about 3 miles away.
Oh.
And that was impressive.
I'm sure.
That was very impressive.
Could you feel it in your?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like being at the drag strip with the standing
show.
behind the engine. No, not the drag show. The drag strip. I was making sure I was calling it the right thing.
I know,
Funny
right?
Cars.
That's another inside joke there.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh my gosh.
David's full of jokes. He's a ham.
Oh, ba-dum-bum.
Yep.
Okay, so we went down to Key West for our honeymoon, and Tracy's like, I want to go to this show. And I'm like, I don't think so.
He wouldn't go. He refused.
What kind of show?
A drag show.
Oh, well, okay.
I didn't go out at nighttime.
He was afraid they
like,
would be hitting on him, I guess, because he was so cute.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. But I'd already seen one person, and I was like thinking,
he
wow,
was traumatized.
That's a nice looking, rear, I guess you could say. And then it turns out she told me later that was a guy, and I'm like, wait a minute, what do you mean? I shouldn't have said that on the radio, but anyway.
Probably not.
Yeah.
What a great start to the show we have here.
Notice how quiet I'm
Telling the
being.
world.
Yes.
I'm not saying a word. I'm not getting in trouble.
Rick's the only one
No.
not getting canceled tonight.
For real.
Goodness gracious.
Right. So, all right.
Again, David Shovel.
Put the shovel down. All right, I will. Well, there's more to that story. We're not going to go there, because the show ain't about me. Even though Rick's already started asking me a bunch of questions, but that's just made into you. That's what you do.
It is. I am an interviewer at heart, and that's what I love about journalism. Is everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about, have loved about doing, being a journalist for the past 30 years. Give me 10 minutes with anybody, and I can have a story.
Yeah.
Because it might not be a happy story, it might not be a fun story, it might be a very sad story or a tragic story, but everybody has a story from every walk of life, and that's what I love about doing the podcast and doing what I've done for the past 30 years.
Yeah, and people love stories.
Oh yeah,
Even one-page stories.
yes.
Well, tell everybody about your podcast.
Well,
if they don't know.
it's called the Scene Vault Podcast. I do it with my former boss at Winston Cup Scene, Steve Wade, and we started. Actually, this is our we're going on 5 years doing this podcast, and have loved every second of it. It has been really cool to do some of the interviews that we've done, and I learned very quickly that some of the stories I was going to get would go far beyond NASCAR. And I remember one in particular interviewed Lyndon Amick, who is probably one of the least known people that we've had on the show, especially when it comes to drivers. But the story that I went down there to get, I knew Sterling. I knew Lyndon when he was in the Busch Series. And I knew that he had left NASCAR in order to join the South Carolina National Guard, and he eventually saw combat in Afghanistan. And so that's the story that I went to South Carolina to get. Talk about NASCAR and talk about Afghanistan and all that. Well, as I was we took a break, and as I came back into the room, he was taking off his jacket, and I knew Lyndon as a very straight-laced guy in the Busch Series. I knew him as a motor racing outreach guy.
Yes.
And so I just thought of him as very straight-laced and everything. And he was taking off his jacket, and his arms were covered in tattoos from the shoulder to the wrist in sleeves. And listen, there's nothing wrong with tattoos. I couldn't get one because the needles would freak me out. No way. I am not doing a tattoo. But without thinking, I said, "What in the world?" And he goes, "These are my post-Jesus tattoos." And again, without thinking, and I know that this is going to sound very judgmental, and I didn't mean it to be. But I go, "No, you mean your pre-Jesus tattoos?" And he said, "No, these are my post-Jesus tattoos." And he proceeds to tell me all about how he had cheated on his wife when he was in racing, and he had been a horrible person, and he was just terrible, terrible husband, terrible father, everything. And I looked down, and my recorder was still going.
Okay.
And I said, "Hold on a second. Let me pause this. I'm sure this isn't anything that you want to get out." And he said, "No, I'll talk about it. Be glad to talk about it." Yeah. And so he talked about, the situation and being a terrible husband and all that, and cheating on his wife and everything. And they literally had a come to Jesus meeting, and he became, saved again. Well, he became saved. And he's now the associate pastor of their church.
Wow.
So, I certainly didn't mean to preach when I came on your show, but it was just a really cool sign that we could be more than just a NASCAR cars going around in circles kind of show. And time again, we've had people on the show who have really shocked me. I go back to Michael McSwain, Fatback. Yep. And I asked him, just a throwaway question. I said something to the effect of, how long did it take for you to get used to being out of NASCAR? And he looked at me and he said, "I will answer that question when I am used to being out of NASCAR."
Okay.
And he said that he had really, really struggled with, his self-worth and he was NASCAR. That was that was in his DNA. And once that got taken away, he really struggled with that. So I told him my story about getting out of NASCAR and how I struggled. And this was on a podcast. And so that was really powerful. So I love being able to tell stories like that.
Good.
Absolutely love telling stories like that.
It's like you said, everybody's got a story.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of that, I can relate. When I got out of racing for the 3 years I was out, I felt, it was when I got back in, I felt like, all right, I belong somewhere now. I mean,
You're back where you belong.
Yeah. That's pretty much.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing that I love about doing this podcast is it allows me to be back in racing, but only as much as I want to be.
Right.
I don't go on the road. I don't travel other than, doing, an interview here and there, but that's not, I don't travel very far for those. So I love being able to be back in NASCAR, around NASCAR on my own terms. And so that's really special to me.
Yep.
Now,
Yep,
what were
still
you
involved.
doing for NASCAR before you transitioned over?
Oh, let's see. Well, I moved to North Carolina in order to go to work for Winston Cup Scene, which was at the time, it was the biggest and most influential newspaper around covering NASCAR. So that was a big deal to me. That was my dream gig. And I moved, well, the last time I moved to North Carolina, I didn't have a job. I just moved up here with that dream.
Wow.
I just wanted to work for Winston Cup Scene. So I didn't have a job. I was doing some stringer work for the newspaper in Columbia, Tennessee, and wasn't getting paid for it. All I was getting was a credential into the race. And I went to Martinsville. This was the fall of 1992. Went to Martinsville, slept in my car, and snuck food out of the press box. And then I went to North Wilkesboro the next weekend and was planning to do the same thing, sneaking food out of the press box. Well, I got to the track on Friday morning and found out that they didn't serve food until Sunday, and I was broke. And that was rock bottom. That was truly rock bottom. And so I asked a buddy of mine to borrow a quarter to make a phone call, and he gave me $2. He didn't know my situation. I would assume he guessed, but he gave me $2, and that's what I bought my dinner with that night. And let me tell you, that was the most sincere prayer I've ever prayed that night.
Right.
And all I could think of to say was, "Oh God." And the next morning I got up and went to the Infield Media Center, and the editor of Winston Cup Scene told me that my first article was going to be in the paper the next week. So that was a big deal. And then the guy who'd given me the $2 told me that a newspaper up in the mountains of North Carolina in Sparta, they needed a sports editor. And he asked me if I would be interested.
Wow.
Yes!
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Can I start today?
And yeah. I went up, did the interview, and by the time I got back to Gastonia, I was staying at my great aunt and uncle's little roadside motel. And by the time I got back, the office manager called and told me that I had the job. And so I worked at the newspaper in Sparta for about 2 years, and then went to work for Winston Cup Scene.
Your ultimate dream.
My ultimate dream.
We always get there.
Well, hey, this is my story. Okay,
Yes,
my
exactly.
ex-wife. Okay, I was married once before the wife that I have now, and my ex-wife, the night that she kicked me out, the last thing she said to me was that I would never be good enough to write for Winston Cup Scene.
Wow.
And she's eating her words.
Well,
I mean,
listen.
Sometimes.
Okay, I won't say that.
You won't, but I did.
I won't say that, but I will say this. My first day on the job at Winston Cup Scene, I signed her up for a subscription. How do you like me now?
There you go.
So
There you go.
that's as arrogant as I need to get.
Well,
That's pretty good. I like that.
my point is karma always has a way of coming back.
Well,
whether it's good or bad.
all I can say is this: I was very blessed
Exactly.
to get to where because that is a miracle. That is a true miracle that I would wind up in exactly the position that I wanted and had sought, and it just worked out.
Good.
It just worked out. So.
Yep, very good.
Yeah.
And speaking of positions, I was wanting to mention that Roush Yates Manufacturing Solutions is hiring machinists. Just want to throw that out there. So if you know anybody that's a machinist that needs a job,
Send your resume.
I am not your guy.
yes.
I could put air in my tire.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So I got a text from Doug Yates this morning. And he was saying that there needs some machinists over there. So so if you would like to do that, you're interested in that, you can message me on my Twitter, and that's DHammiam. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, or on Facebook, whatever. Just let me know if you know anybody that is.
And you don't even have to sleep in your car to get this gig. You can just go straight to Roush Yates, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Great pay benefits and the whole
Man,
deal. Yeah.
that is a gig right there, man.
I wanted to ask you, how many of those Martinsville hot dogs did you have?
Would you believe that I have never had a Martinsville hot dog?
Man.
I am not, honestly, I'm not, listen, I know that people out there watching this on YouTube or whatever, they're going to say, yeah, that big boy's lying. But no, I'm not a hot dog guy. I can eat them.
We'll have to get you one.
But it would be,
I've never had one either.
You know what? I take that back. Because one of our listeners to the podcast treated me and my sons to Martinsville race tickets this past year. And while I was there, I ate one Martinsville hot dog.
Okay, yes.
One Martinsville hot dog.
So you can say you've only had one. That's still
I've
good.
only had one.
I mean, that's still impressive.
That makes me feel better. I'm glad that you've had at least one. You gotta have at least one Martinsville hot dog.
Yeah. Well, you just never know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
There's a lot. Or so if you go to the racetracks, there's a lot of food in different places. Like you go out to Phoenix. It's the first time I ever had rattlesnake.
At their track? Rattlesnake at the track?
No, I don't think it wasn't at the track.
I
But I'm
thought
just
you
saying,
meant like they're serving rattlesnake at the
Yeah.
concession stand at the track, and I was like, wow.
No. When I went to Homestead, it's the first time I ever had gator. They probably have it at the track there, but I'm not sure about that.
They
but
may.
Wow.
Very well may have.
Well, Memphis had the best barbecue ribs I've ever had in my life. A place called Rendezvous Ribs.
We'll have to go there.
Oh.
Memphis.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been to Memphis.
I'm telling you, you think that you're going to go down. Well, you go down this deserted alleyway. You literally pass dumpsters to get to the place, and it is the best ribs I've ever had.
And that's usually how it happens.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.
Well, let's ask Christian what he thinks. If he ever been to, what is the food you've had at the track?
I've had the Martinsville hot dog before.
Okay.
I don't eat as often at the track as I used to, just because prices went up. But it is pretty cool that Wilkesboro, the prices are going to be really low for the food there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is cool.
I will say, when I went to Daytona, they weren't selling gator down there. It was a little north of the Everglades. But I would say probably the track that I've been to that has had the best food. That's a tough one between either Charlotte or Martinsville.
Okay. Charlotte or Martinsville is the best food, and
There's
that's
a lot of great restaurants around Charlotte too, with with racing memorabilia and bumpers on the walls. There's a bunch
Hooters.
of great stuff. Well,
Lancasters. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
ate at
I don't know why I
Lancaster's.
said that, but yeah, Lancaster's. Yeah, I work right near there. I go there often.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bring out the hush puppies right away.
And the other place that I really, really, really miss, and I have not ate there since I've got out of racing, is Sambo's in Leipzig, Delaware, just outside of Dover. And I once did a column for the newspaper about Dover, and listen, I wasn't very complimentary about Dover. And if you had gone to the racetrack at about that time, you would understand why. It was just, it was not a good facility.
Okay.
And so I wrote a column basically ripping the racetrack from turn 1, turn 2, all the way around the racetrack. I was ripping everything. And I said, throughout the story, every couple of every couple of paragraphs, I said, but there's Sambo's shrimp. A couple paragraphs later, but there's Sambo's French fries. But there's Sambo's period, the decor, the ambiance, whatever. And I wound up getting a letter from the Dover Chamber of Commerce. And they were not happy that I had, they were not happy with me. And so they said, and oh, by the way, Sambo's is not in Dover. It's in Leipzig, Delaware. And I started to write back and say, well, there isn't a single reason to go to Dover if Sambo's isn't in Dover. So, I miss Dover.
Maybe they shouldn't have admitted that.
I miss Sambo's. Yes, I do.
The only thing I remember eating at Dover was crawdads. But it was because somebody brought crawdads. I think it was Nemechek's wife. Not Martha. Yeah, Andrea. Yeah. Yeah, I believe she was. She brought some crawdads. First time I ever had them.
Okay.
First time, and I had some when I was in Florida. I had a crawdad. One crawdad.
I don't know that I've ever had one.
Yeah.
I don't care for one.
I don't know.
They're all right.
They're like little mini lobsters. But there's this mustard stuff that Bigger Man Scott Trevison kept telling me. The mustard is poop.
Yeah.
It's yellow. And you're supposed to like take it apart and then suck that. Anyway, that's what you're supposed to do, and that's where the flavor is. But yeah, I didn't care for them that much.
Okay, I can understand why.
Yeah.
I thought the yellow stuff was the brains.
Okay. Anyway,
I retract my statement about Charlotte. I remember when I went to Darlington, they have a great restaurant outside Turn 4, or was Turn 4, but now Turn 2. They have a great restaurant outside the track there. There's a lot of cool stuff on the walls.
You talking about Darlington?
Yes.
Darlington. Oh, yeah. Turn 4 Grill. Yes.
Turn 4 Grill. All
yes.
Right. Was it break time?
It's break time.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to get to some of these questions and comments coming in on YouTube. And if you'd like to go on and see where we're here live in the Randy Moran studio, go to DHammiam on YouTube, and we'll be right back with Rick Houston on Racing Roots with Ham.
Home, family, time. If faced with a serious illness, what would be most important to you? Hospice and Palliative Care of Iredell County can help you and your family focus on what is most important when dealing with a serious illness. As the only 5-star hospice agency in our area, Hospice and Palliative Care of Iredell cares for patients in Iredell and the surrounding communities, offering in-home hospice and palliative care, inpatient hospice care, bereavement support, and rainbow kits. If you are dealing with or caring for someone with a serious illness, call us today. We are here to listen. 704-873-4719.
Are you ready for a stable full-time job with overtime? JPS Composite Materials is hiring at our Statesville facility located off Garner Bagnell Boulevard. The demand for our aerospace performance fabrics is up dramatically, and these are direct hire positions with overtime. Benefits include health, dental, life, 401k with match, 1 week paid vacation after 100.
Mulch installations, shrub trimming, irrigation maintenance and repairs, and all of your landscape lighting needs. So please give us a call at 704-660-9802. Again, that number is 704-660-9802. Thank you for the opportunity of your business, and God bless.
You're listening to Racing Roots with Ham on 550 and 92.9 WAME.
And we are back to Racing Roots with Ham. as Meredith just mentioned there. And we've got Rick Houston in with us this fine evening. And Rick Houston is of the Houstons of the space age. What do you call it? Greatness. Have you ever done your ancestry? You know, like look to see where you need to, man. You got a famous name. I mean, you got Sam Houston. You got all that stuff.
I do know that
more,
Sam Houston's brother is buried in the same very small family cemetery up in Johnson City, Tennessee, outside Johnson City, that my mom and dad are in. So, that's about as far back as I go.
Okay. Well, look into that. I can do that for you. Okay. I'm pretty good with that stuff, actually.
Well, how much are you going to charge?
I mean, I do it for all right, so here's the deal. I wasn't going to talk about money, but what I do, I started another YouTube channel because I have all this spare time, you know, and it's called Hamcestry, like a spinoff of my name, Ham, right? And I was wanting to get into doing ancestry for Traci's ancestry, because she's got the Earnhardts in her bloodline. Actually, she's sixth cousin to Dale Earnhardt. And so I found that and, did this research. And it's something I've done for 25 years or so. Since my grandfather passed away in 1992.
Wow.
I've been doing that's just 30 years ago.
Yeah, you've got like three big binders full of stuff.
Yeah. I used to have to actually send off for microfilm for them to send them to a family learning center and to libraries for me to go in there and sift through microfilm. That's before the computers and all that. So I started doing it back then. Anyway, just another thing I like to do.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I'm
sign me up.
Good at it. It's
all right.
Like being a private investigator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
cool.
Yeah.
Good
all right, so back to racing.
All right, do we want to say hey to our guests real quick?
Let's do that.
On YouTube. So far we've got Greg Gould listening. We've got Dickie Dennis. We've got Jim Dooley. Nobody else has made comments.
Okay, so we're talking about Dickie Dennis here, and did he say something about being on the fence?
Jim Dooley said, do they need a fence climber? When you were talking about Roush needing a job.
Oh, yeah, fence climbers, because, our friend Dickie Dennis, was you saying something, Chris? Sorry.
I was just laughing.
Our friend up there, Dickie Dennis, is the infamous fence climber that climbed the fence in Richmond, 2014.
Okay.
And they stopped the race to get him off the fence. But he's got military background, so he wasn't going to get hurt. He's just up there climbing.
Okay.
He likes to be high up, and he likes to climb stuff,
All right.
So he left his phone sitting in the stand. So he realized it. He was wanting to get a selfie with the 4 cars that passed by. He's a Harvick fan. And he was like, he left his cell phone down there, threw his arms up in the air, like, I can't believe I left my cell phone. Yeah. But it's a classic story. He's great. He's a great guy.
I always love listening to the Radioactive from Fox Sports during that race, because all the drivers are so aggravated and there's a guy climbing the fence, It's, some spectators up there. But,
I bet that's how they put it.
Yeah. That's the family. That's the PG version, the family version of that. Yeah. It was a little more colorful coming from the
Alan
radios.
Bestwick.
We got some Facebook watchers. We got Phil Combs is tuned in, Bill Blair Jr., and Stoney Ballard says, awesome story. You were talking earlier about how you got into working in journalism. He said, awesome story, brother. And then Michael Klein wanted to ask you, Rick, he says, do you plan on doing a podcast with Dennis Setzer?
I would love to do a podcast with Dennis Setzer, because I don't believe there is a nicer person on the face of the earth than Dennis Setzer. I saw Dennis. I hadn't seen Dennis in I don't know how long, but when they had the open house at North Wilkesboro, he was there. And, of course, I was walking around the infield seeing what I could see. And Dennis came up behind me and, tapped me on the shoulder and said, and, I mean, it was just amazing, because I hadn't seen him in so long. And it was like we had just seen each other yesterday, and talked for a few minutes. So, yes, absolutely. I think that'd be a great idea.
There you go.
For a podcast.
Did he come to Stocks for Tots? Was he there for that? There was somebody that looked like him there. That's
I do not remember.
Okay. I think that was somebody else. But Sherman Ballard, that's our good friend Stoney Ballard, too. Yeah. He commented on YouTube.
Yeah, I was getting ready to read that as soon as I got a chance. He says, great show, great seeing Rick open up, great stories. Stoney's kids still loves you all. One student wanted to know if you know David Crockett. Had to ask.
David David Crockett. You know, like King of the Wild Frontier.
I mean, I'm just reading. He says LOL.
Oh, yes. That's probably what he's saying. But yeah,
David Crockett.
I'm assuming.
Okay, Sam. Okay, I get it.
Probably because I've heard that as many times as you've heard.
You know, that's close to being Houston. We've got a problem. But, you know, at least that's original.
Yeah.
At least that's original.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
David
I've heard
wasn't
that as many
original.
times. I've
David
heard that since
Crockett.
kindergarten. So yeah.
David Crockett.
Hey, so we were down at the Racing's North Turn restaurant there, and it's been closed up until a couple weeks ago. I guess they opened back up, but it looks like they have repainted the whole place. The patio was opened up, and it actually looked a little bigger to me for some reason. Maybe they just
It was the flooring. It was lighter.
Oh, okay, lighter flooring. So they've updated. Wow. Yeah, they had all the old pictures hanging up, and all the cool stuff, all of the memorabilia. They had a race car inside, or a little Legends car. Yeah, down inside there. And so we had dinner with Bill Blair. I had the Bill Blair grouper sandwich.
Yes, you did.
That was good. And they had let's see, Bill Blair was there. Who else was there? Ray Lamb, the photographer, and Scott Trevison, Jana Trevison were there with us. And who else was there? Bill Rossi.
And the guy sitting next
Mario Rossi's son.
Yeah.
Bill. And then over sitting next to you, who was sitting next to you? You're supposed to know.
I don't know.
Bill and Sheila, of course.
I can't remember names. You know that.
And then, Bob Hissam. Bob Hissam from the NASCAR. Not the NASCAR.
North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame.
Yes, that's right.
That's
right.
That Bob.
I knew where it was, but I couldn't remember his name to save my life. I'm sitting here racking my brain thinking, why are you putting me on the spot, David?
I just wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he likes to do that.
So that was a good time. And then the next morning, when we were leaving, we should have stayed a little bit longer. Anyway, another story. We went back to the first turn. Have you ever been at Biker Bar? It's kind of a...
That's what it says.
Okay. First Turn Steakhouse. Yeah. There's a nice biker bar, and I guess it's pretty well known. We went over there and had breakfast for $5. We had to fill up your plate, all you could eat. You know,
how does this show always get back to food?
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
And how are you skinny?
Jay, I'm not.
I need to know your secret.
I wish I was.
Keep active, I guess, is the best thing. Keep active.
Wow.
Yeah. No, but the breakfast, all the money went to charity.
Yes, very good. Yep. And that was food. We're talking about food again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
Always.
there was at least 3 times that I spent $100 on our meal while we were down there. Okay, one time it was a drink. It was $27 for my drink. So
27. Good. Great.
Oh, I didn't tell you about that.
How big was the drink?
It was 32 ounce. It was on a pedestal.
Gosh.
It was Bahama Mama.
Tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it the Bahama Mama? Because I thought she said it was something else. Anyways, irregardless.
Now, see, I thought you were a health freak because you were saying before the show that you don't drink sodas or soft drinks or anything.
Yeah.
So I was thinking you're a
no.
hardcore,
No.
Okay, so 32 ounce bucket of whatever you were drinking.
I compromise. You know, if I know that I'm gonna be, let's say I'm gonna drink a beer, then I'll try not to eat bread that evening or that day or drink sweet tea. I'll compromise.
Well, maybe we could swap co-hosts. You know, you could bring in Stick. No, that would not be a good idea. That would not be a good idea.
I need a intervention, I guess. In a way. Anyway, that was a good time down there in Daytona, but we had to come back. We passed by the Streamline Hotel many times. That's where Bill and Sheila are staying.
They might not want everybody to know that.
Well, they're having, but they're having an event there.
Okay.
Wednesday, they're going to have their thing down. So if anybody's going down there, go down there and check it out. Streamline Hotel. That's where the signing for the big meeting was in with Bill France and the guys that he got together. Yeah. And decided we're going to form this group.
I wonder how that ever worked out. Whatever happened to that deal?
Man, it just kind of fell through. 75 years later, right?
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
it was just kind of taken off. It was a good idea. Strictly stock division.
Yes, it was.
Dickie Dennis says, I read something Mr. Houston wrote and it hit home about the battle not being with the other runners. The battle is with the voice in the back of our heads telling us to quit.
Yeah, that would be me. That would be me.
There you go.
Well, that wasn't my. I was quoting somebody else, but yeah, that's the.
He said it hit home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
He said he had his Martinsville hot dog was with Beer Man cooked it. That's
Yeah.
right. We met up with Dickie Dennis at Martinsville, hanging out for the race. He was allowed in Martinsville. He's not allowed in Richmond ever again.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, never again. So that's tough.
Now, do they have his picture at the gates? I mean, how do they determine if he's there or not?
I don't think he wants to risk it because of how much penalties and jail time he had to do.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, there was more
40
involved in
days in
that.
jail.
Wow.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I believe that would probably,
Scar me for life.
that would swear me off
Yeah.
going to Richmond too. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll watch that one from home on TV. That would be okay. That's what he's thinking.
Yes, for sure. All right, so we were talking about. I'm going to steer us in the right direction. We're going to go back to where you're from, where you started out.
Okay, all right. Well, I was born on Redstone Arsenal, the Army base. My dad was in the Army when I was born. And so, therefore, I was 6 years old before I spent 2 birthdays in the same state. We moved around. We went from Huntsville to Aberdeen, Maryland. Then my dad went to Vietnam. No, then we moved to Japan and were there actually almost 2 years. And then my dad went to Vietnam, and while he was in Vietnam, my mom and I came back to the Johnson City, Tennessee area. And then after my dad came home, we moved to Nashville, and we were in Nashville when he got out of the military, and that's basically where we stayed. We did move back to Huntsville for a couple of years in the late 70s, but yeah, I'm a Nashville kid.
Okay.
I'm a Nashville kid, but I have lived here in North Carolina for 31 years now.
I would say you're.
Yeah, I'm probably more North Carolina now than I am Tennessee, especially since every time I go back to Nashville now, it's less and less like home. My parents are both deceased, so there's not the homestead to go back to. And my best friend Joey Stepp and his mom, they're still in the same basic area. But other than that, that's my only roots there. That's my only connection there. So I do plan to go back here in maybe a month or so. But yeah, North Carolina is my home now.
Well, when David and I were in Nashville, we had to go see Johnny Cash's grave.
Oh yeah, that's a story.
Hendersonville.
Growing up around Nashville, you kind of stayed away from the touristy spots. I'm sure that people who live around Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge, they don't go down that main strip
True.
of all the touristy stuff. But in Nashville, you know where to go, where not to go. And Johnny Cash, when I was, I don't know, I was probably 7, 8 years old. I was really young, but Johnny Cash and his entourage came into a Chinese restaurant that my mom and I and my brother were eating at. I guess my dad was there too, but my mom freaked out. Oh, my mom went nuts.
That's cool.
And she got Johnny Cash to sign the back of my brother's baby picture because that's all my mom had. And not long after that, my mom's purse got stolen at Kroger's, and she was more upset about losing that autograph from Johnny Cash than she was anything else in that purse.
Because everything else is
Yeah.
replaceable.
Oh yeah, Johnny Cash. That was my mama's. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought whenever I went into the Goodwill there in Nashville that I was going to find some really cool, what was I looking for? What do you call
knows?
women's clothes? I mean, just.
What do you call women's clothes? Clothes. You were looking for ball gowns? I mean, what were you looking for?
Rick's like, where's he going with
Let's
this?
see. Where's the exit door?
Which podcast did you come to?
Anyway,
Okay, I'll tell the backstory to that. I was going to be in a womanless beauty pageant to raise money for Red Cross, like $50,000, what we ended up raising. And I was going to be, you had to have a car name, and I was going to be Tammy Chevette, and I was going to play my banjo and do a little singing, like Tammy Wynette,
Okay. All right.
And so I needed something to wear, and I thought, we're going to Nashville. there's got to be some nice clothes in one of these Goodwills up there. And I don't know. I come out with some pretty cool stuff, but nothing like what I thought would have.
Yeah, we go on vacation and shop for him.
Now, you were talking about a shovel earlier that he keeps digging
Yeah.
with.
And I'm not the shopper. I am not the shopper.
I just thought that would throw you for a loop. You might like that.
Okay, all right.
Try to keep it light,
Absolutely.
Dickie Dennis says 5 years if I'm recognized on the property.
Oh. Whoa. Oh, ooh. Yeah, that's definitely.
Maybe
that would
stay
be
away.
enough
Yeah.
to keep me away.
5 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
Man.
that would do it.
Yeah.
That would do it.
Yeah.
We need to have a petition. Bring
Dickie back.
Yes.
He
Free
promises
Dickie.
not to climb the fence.
I like that. Oh, yes, that's perfect. I like that. All right, so speaking of, I don't know why I said speaking of. Forgive me for saying speaking of. Let's talk about your wife. How's your wife doing? You said you talked about her a little bit before the show.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought you might want to say hey to her.
My wife is a recently retired district court judge here in North Carolina, and she has. I was telling you guys earlier before the show that my wife did not marry me for my NASCAR connections. She knew nothing about NASCAR. This is how little she knew. We started dating 1 month to the day before I started work at Winston Cup Scene. So that's all we have ever known. That's all we knew at the first beginning of our marriage was me being on the road. Mm-hmm. But she didn't marry me for my NASCAR connections. I started work at Winston Cup Scene in November, and in late January or whenever the Winston Cup preview was, I had to cover it for the paper. So got there early in the morning, like 7 o'clock in the morning before everybody showed up and everything. Well, as we were getting there on the main floor of the convention center there in Winston-Salem, ESPN had a studio set up, a set up. And they were all, the people who were working there, they were all making over this guy. And he was sitting in a director's chair, and they were making over him. They were, patting him on the back. And I don't know that they did makeup, but they were just paying him a lot of attention. And my wife, Jeannie, has never had unexpressed thought in her life. And listen, I'm not going to get in trouble for that because it's something I've told her a million times. But she looked at this, she looked at it, she watched all this going on for a few minutes, and then she goes, "Who is that idiot? And why are they making such a big deal over him?" I said, "Jeannie, that's Dale Earnhardt. You need to go. Please, for the love of all that's holy, please go over there, sit down, and don't say anything else to anybody." Yeah. And so that's my Dale Earnhardt story, my Dale Earnhardt and Jeannie story. But when I would go on the road, she would ask me who won the race, and I would tell her, and she didn't know from what color car does he drive. So. And honestly, I enjoyed that because she had her life and I had my life. And when I was at home, it wasn't still all racing.
Right.
I could decompress from whatever was going on at the racetrack or at work or in the office or whatever. And so it wasn't, it was always that time to disconnect and recharge. Mm-hmm. And so I've always appreciated that about the home life.
Very good.
Yeah.
So you done good.
I done good.
Yeah. Everybody needs to practice marriage. You got the first marriage.
Mulligan.
And I can say that too because I'm on my multiple marriage.
Yeah, well.
You'll have that.
Yep.
Jim Dooley says, "Free Dickie, I'm in. Let's put it on a huge balloon. We will make national news."
Oh, no.
No, we're staying out of the balloon business.
Oh, my goodness.
Dickie says somebody would shoot it down.
All right, here's what we do. The memes that have been going around, they showed the balloon because now we've had these balloons, the China balloons. Somebody needs to go ahead and do one that says "Free Dickie." Yeah, that's what that balloon was.
Yeah.
Yep. So I have a question, and I know we're going back and forth a lot,
right.
but you, So you talk about growing up in Nashville. How do you, like, Nashville's not necessarily a huge racing industry, so how do you get, your first sights on racing? What puts you interested in motorsports?
Well, first of all, Nashville's not a big race. What? Come on, youngster.
Well, I guess you got the fairgrounds and all of that.
We got the fairgrounds.
But I mean, you think but I think about Nashville. I'm thinking
what's that guy's name that started out there? Daryl something.
Yeah. Okay. Now it's time for me to put my shovel down. I'm sorry.
No, Daryl. Okay, yeah. Growing up, I was a huge baseball fan. I collected baseball cards. At one time, I had over 100,000 baseball cards. And loved it. I mean, I was obsessed. Well, my first wife said basically it was going to be either her or the baseball cards. So I got rid of the baseball cards, and she still divorced me. So, I lost out on my baseball cards. That's fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, I also worship the Cincinnati Reds of the Big Red Machine era. Johnny Bench, that is the greatest baseball team of all time. But in particular, I worshiped Pete Rose. I mean, I worshiped him. And when he went through his troubles and got banished from baseball, I needed a new interest. Yeah. I needed a new hobby. And I went over to my best friend's house, Joey Stepp, just by chance. Didn't plan on going over there to watch the race or anything. And his mom, Sandy, is by far the biggest race fan I've ever met in my life, period, bar none. And so I went over there. They were watching the Daytona 500, and so I watched the Daytona 500 that day, and I was immediately intrigued. I was immediately hooked. And I'm not the kind of person who can just read about something and then set it down and go back to my regular life. I can't just read the book. I have to write the book.
Yeah.
I can't just be interested in it. And so I jumped into the deep end of the pool, and that day, Sandy subscribed to this newspaper that was then called Grand National Scene, and I picked it up and I started memorizing every single word and becoming familiarized with all the riders and their styles. And that's how I learned the sport of NASCAR, was sitting on Sandy Stepp's couch and reading Grand National, then Winston Cup Scene. And so I started bugging Steve and Deb, and that first meeting with Steve, I didn't even get past the lobby. He basically said, "Don't call us, we'll call you." And I basically just kept pestering the crap out of them. Mm-hmm. And when I went to work for the newspaper in Sparta, I sent them both a subscription to the paper. And yeah, that's how it wound up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Nashville, it is a racing place. But that's how I became interested in NASCAR. So
very good. Cool. So Nashville does have an extensive background in the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway or Fairgrounds. It's like the longest running track now that's still operating.
It never quit, really, did it? They never really stopped because they've always had something running.
Continuous, I guess would be the right word. But yes, Stoney Ballard says he says Marty Robbins, and that's true too, because Marty would play. He would go race there, and then he'd go play at the Grand Ole Opry. And then the guys that leave the track and go watching.
No, that is a cool story. Wasn't there some guys that recorded a NASCAR album that wasn't very it wasn't necessarily the best to listen to, right?
Some of the drivers, there were actually two different albums at different times, and the drivers actually sang, and I don't know who came up with that or what they were drinking or smoking or shooting or so.
It's like Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip.
I wonder if Cale Yarborough can sing. Turns out, no.
That's kind of thing. Who else can sing, actually? Kyle Petty, of course. He can sing. First time I met him, actually, he gave me his cassette tape and he was telling me, I guess maybe it was the first time I met him, whatever. And he was telling me how, he said anybody can do it when they put you in the studio, but I don't know. I'm not so sure about that either, because they kind of proved that.
I have sang in church 2 or 3 times, but every time I've ever sang in church, my eyes are screwed shut.
You don't want to see who's looking at you.
Oh, no. There's none of this. Imagine them in their drawers or anything like that. No, I cannot see. I cannot see a thing because my eyes are plastered shut.
Okay. You're singing solo?
I've sang solos.
Okay.
I've sang solos.
You don't give us a sample?
But no, that was a long time ago.
I mean, hey, we're on the radio, so this could be
your debut.
This could be my shot. I could be discovered at this. There you go.
You are on the radio.
Tough luck.
That's right.
I'm out of luck because it ain't happening.
He says he does better talking than singing, so we'll keep it that way.
I guess so.
I'm actually a better writer than I am a singer. I'm actually a better writer than I am a talker. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So naturally, I decided to start a podcast.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to take another quick break, and this will be the last break, and we'll come back to Racing Roots with Hamm. We got Rick Houston in with us, so don't go anywhere. Be right back.
Hey, we found Ryan Scott over at the Chevy store. What's the latest and greatest from Randy Marion?
Billy Buck, the latest and greatest is we have a special purchase. Yes, the Randy Marion way of doing it. King of price, king of special purchase. How about a 2021 Chevrolet Equinox? These are LTs, all-wheel drives. Yes, all-wheel drives for $17,770. That's starting at $17,770. Huge selection at Randy Marion Chevrolet in Statesville. You pick the color. You take it home today. Chevrolet Equinox all-wheel drive LTs. Come see them today.
When your celebration of life is prepared, it becomes a gift to your family later. No one should have to pay for a loss when they're experiencing one. Paying in advance protects your loved ones and gives you the peace of mind you deserve. Let us help you plan every detail with professionalism and compassion. We're Bunch Johnson Funeral Home, 705 Davie Avenue, Statesville. Call us at 704-873-7223 to schedule an appointment.
You're listening to Racing Roots with Hamm on 550 and 92.9 WAME.
All right, and thank you for that, Meredith. We are back to Racing Roots with Hamm with our guest this evening, Mr. Rick Houston. I'm not going to do it again.
Houston, we got a problem.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, you beat me to it, but you didn't. Anyway, yes. Very good, man. It's good to have you in here, and we're glad to hear all these stories. And you're from the Scene Vault podcast.
Yes.
I like that. I like your logo and everything about it. Yeah, it's a great show. You do yours pre-recorded, and you pop out the videos, and they make people want to click on them. They're like, click.
I could never, ever do a show live.
Oh.
Ever.
And why is that?
Because when I hit record to record the podcast with Steve and I develop a speech impediment. I stutter like I'm doing now.
You're not stuttering.
And there was a time at the end of each show, I include some of our outtakes. And one time I decided that in the outtakes section, I was going to include all the times that I said the phrase, yeah. And I was thinking, honestly and truly, I was thinking it was going to be like 7 or 8 times and it'd be funny. I lost count at 35. Gosh. And it actually went longer than my outro music did. And so, so it was literally, and that's all. So okay. No, I could not do a show live.
Yeah.
I could not host a show live because I can't think that quickly on my feet.
It's not as bad as let me think.
That's a bad one.
So that's not.
It is what it is.
Don't beat yourself up.
My wife has the ability to think on her feet. She once had a person in court call her it rhymes with witch. In court.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is a guy that's in front of her.
Right.
And my wife said, "That's judge witch to you."
Yes.
And that's 30 days in jail.
Wow.
Yep.
And then he goes, "F you." And she goes, "Motion denied. That's another 30 days." If that had been me, I would have thought of that a month later.
Right.
Sitting at a stoplight somewhere. I keep threatening to get her a Judge Witch T-shirt, but
that would be a good one.
yeah. Well, Valentine's is tomorrow,
That's
David.
Right, David.
Oh, that's right. Yes. All right.
Anyways, wasn't that weather nice today?
Well,
some good weather out there.
Here's my problem with Valentine's Day is why don't we appreciate our mates or whatever, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband every day. And why do we have to pick one particular day to say, oh, this is,
on, man.
I'm going to buy you some flowers this day?
Okay, I don't think you've once bought me flowers. So.
You don't like flowers.
Exactly.
Now, see, my wife is allergic, and that's the gospel. She is allergic to flowers,
yeah.
especially orchids or something like that. She cannot deal with those. So.
I said that's great, but then I didn't mean it like that. I mean,
It's okay. David's always digging himself in a hole. Instead of sending me something on anniversary, birthday, whatever, it's usually a week late.
What? Now, see, my wife does that.
You have to wait
She'll buy me something like 3 or 4 months in advance, but then forget where she put it.
Oh.
And so I have gotten birthday and Christmas presents. Well, my birthday's 9/11. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I will get birthday presents in like late October. And I'll get Christmas presents in March.
All right, here's the solution to this problem. Have you ever been into a Dollar General the day after Valentine's and see what kind of deals you can get?
Yes.
I mean, you can get all kinds of good stuff, 75% off the day after Valentine's.
Now, he would be upset if I did that for him.
Hey, go
Let's
buy me a
just
bigger
say-
box of chocolates. I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
That's what I need. Okay. So anyway, yeah.
To go with your ice water that you drink with meals? No, I don't work like that.
All right, here's the deal. I'll take you out to dinner and I'll let you get a tea. It's going to cost me three extra dollars for that tea.
You'll allow me to get a tea.
He's going to let you.
Yeah.
He's gonna. Woo.
Wow.
How much was the 32-ounce
Wow.
bucket?
Exactly. Did I even get a say-so in what you order? Never.
David, I'll be glad to escort you to your car.
Oh man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last time I went on a dinner for Valentine's Day, there was a woman with her dog in the restaurant, and when I looked at the dog, she got mad at me. Said, "Don't look at it."
Oh, don't look at my dog.
Don't look at my dog.
Don't look at my dog.
Wow.
That's about the worst.
Okay.
And
No
it
problem.
also had a gun. So, yeah.
Oh, was it a service dog? Like
She didn't tell me. I
Hold
didn't
on.
want to look at her because she was kind of scary.
Wait a minute. The dog had a gun or she had
She
one?
had a gun
Oh,
in her
okay.
purse.
Okay.
Hello.
Wow.
Don't look at my dog.
Don't look at my dog.
Don't look at my dog.
My bad.
Hey,
Because the dog was like very describable.
Yeah. Kristen, did you have any back comments over on Facebook?
Yes, we do. Actually, Bob Hissom says great time in Daytona.
Oh,
I
great,
actually
Bob.
saw him a couple weeks ago at the North Carolina Auto Racing Hall of Fame.
Yes.
He was there. Joy Flock Kirkpatrick says hello. With a
Oh, hey,
wave.
Joey. We saw her yesterday, too. Her and Peggy, her sister, Peggy, yes. That's Tim Flock's daughters.
Awesome.
Yeah, they were down.
The first copy of Grand National Scene I ever bought was from Tim's wife, Frances.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Great. Bill Blair says enjoying the stories, and Scott Trevisan also come in here saying hello.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Who was the last one?
Scott
Trevison.
Oh, Scott Travis,
I didn't
yes.
want to mess up his last name.
Travis. Oh, yeah. Scott, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of our friends we were hanging out with down in Florida. So I had the Bill Blair grouper sandwich, and it was very good. Blackened. Good stuff.
And back to food.
I know, right again. Gosh. Okay. All right, let's just skip on past this food thing because we did have a question, and that's from Scott Travis.
Scott says, please ask Mr. Houston if he has a good Phil story. Phil who?
I tried to get Phil to call
Phil
in.
Cavelli.
Cavalli.
I'm going to plead the fifth on the grounds that it may incriminate me.
Incriminate you.
Let's see. I roomed in Daytona with Phil once.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of the story.
There you go.
That's all I had better say.
Yeah. Well, I did text Deb Williams and ask her if she wanted to call, but she was said she's getting ready to go down to Daytona, so she's getting ready for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good
Early
old day
morning.
Big stuff happening in Daytona.
There's some kind of race this weekend.
Yeah, I
isn't
think so, Dave.
Yep, there is. I think Scott said he was packing up for that too. Scott Trapperson, beer man.
Yeah. Tell us about Daytona this week.
Tell us about Daytona this
Yeah,
week.
what's
Why are you
going on
looking at me like
what's
that? Why
going
are your
on in
eyes so
Daytona
wide
this week?
open? Hey, do you know who Stony Ballard is? Stony Ballard. Sure, it's Sherman on here, but he's Stony Ballard. He was the let's see.
Isn't he a minister?
No, he's not. He is the
Stony.
He was just 1987 Talladega. Davey Allison won the race, and he's the one on the hood of the car doing this right here, the Superman.
Gotcha.
Him and his brothers.
All right.
Clint Ballard,
Okay,
Stoney,
yeah.
Danny, Lisa. They were
Okay.
all
All right.
six pack.
I was thinking of another Stoney. That's
right.
the minister.
There
Yeah,
probably is
yeah.
another Stoney.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he stays anyway? So yes, Paul Rodriguez. On the first day of February, go to the store for Kit's birthday. I go to the store for Kit's birthday, anniversary, and Valentine's Day cards because it all happens in February. That's a good man. Yes.
So he plans ahead.
Yeah, he doesn't have to think too hard if it's all in the same month. Just get it all knocked out in one visit.
That's right. Okay, so you're asking me about the race. We had the Busch Clash. Is it still Busch Clash?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the Busch Clash.
That was out in the LA Coliseum last week, which confuses the heck out of me because I still always think about Busch Clash in Daytona. You know, it's so then we had the Super Bowl this weekend, and football's over with now. Now we're headed into Daytona race week. And speaking of football being over with, here.
Goodbye, football. Hello, NASCAR. It's Racing Roots with Ham on 550 and 92.9 WAME.
All right. Thank you for that, Meredith. So that's goodbye football. And now we're into racing. Tracy, are you ready for the race Sunday? It's going to be Sunday, right? It's been Sunday every year for, 48 years. Oh, I'm sorry. Back up.
We're way past 48.
We're way past that. I don't know why.
It was a long time ago.
I don't know why I even said that.
That's what you get for trying to call me out.
But you know, they used to race on during the week. They used to race. Was it Mondays or something? They wouldn't race on Sunday at one point.
No, that was the Firecracker 400.
Way back.
Yeah, that was that was always on July 4th.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going further back. I'm going way back.
Oh, okay. All
yeah,
right.
but that's another story. Anyway, we won't. All right. Yes. Are you going to watch a race? Daytona 500. Big race.
I mean, I might.
Okay. What did you want to know about it?
No, tell us what's going on in Daytona this week, like all the events and stuff.
We talked about that a little bit. I mean, we talked about the start of Streamline Hotel.
Yeah, and that they canceled the First Turns parade.
Yeah, that's why we went down last weekend. That was supposed to be last weekend, I believe it was. Have you ever been down to the Racing's North Turn Legends Beach Parade?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
That's where they do they bring all the old cars.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
39 Fords and whatever. There's an age limit. Like it has to be before 57 or something like that.
Cool.
And they drive them on the old beach road course.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we got to get in the car and drive around in a 39 Ford. No, it was a 41 Ford. It was Steve Gardner Levitt's car.
With just one seat.
Steve is Gardner Levitt's son, and he owns the car. Yeah, one seat. She got to sit in her dress over there in the floor. I was nice enough to give her my jacket to sit on.
Yeah. I got to sit on a jacket.
I'm just kidding. She would have had to drive the thing. It was a straight drive.
I can drive a straight drive. Maybe not very well, but
Yeah. Yes.
it's been years.
Yeah. Anyway.
I owned a straight drive.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, good.
Awesome.
All right. So back to Rick's story. What's you going to talk about, Rick? We talked about your Scene Vault podcast, and you're not doing the lives.
No.
So you never see yourself doing a live, right?
No.
It's not going to happen.
Never do that.
Okay.
No.
Well, the editing thing actually works pretty good, I do believe, because you can target specific questions and answers. You know.
Well, no, I don't. The interviews that we do, I run, as is. I don't edit those, other than taking out, some of the deep breaths and clicks and whatever. So those are run as is. But Steve and I, that takes a lot of editing. I would say that for every 10 minutes that Steve and I record, it probably takes at least 15 to 20 minutes of editing to do.
That's
so,
not much, really, because it takes a long time to edit stuff.
It does. So, no, I don't ever see us doing anything live. I don't see me being the host of anything live. Now this, I'm a little more comfortable because I'm just fielding the questions and reacting or whatever. But as far as coming up with the pattern, the banner, and all, no, that's not me. I'm the world's worst introvert.
Oh, I got you. Yes.
Yeah.
Who comes up with the titles and the for your video?
The titles.
Yeah, whenever you put it on YouTube.
To make it. I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just, there's not a lot of thought that goes into it. I just kind of throw them up there or whatever. So I might need to work on that.
Well,
sounds like I do.
Well, no,
evidently.
David was just saying, you said you make a better writer.
Well, yeah, so here's the difference. Like my show, if I were to take clips from the live and do what you're doing as far as having the title it something that's probably someone has a question, or it's something enticing, something curious.
Yeah.
And redo them and put them back on there. They typically do decent.
Right.
But doing my live show, I just title it what it is. I mean, Rick Houston on Racing Roots with Hamm.
Well, that's kind of what I did in the very beginning. The title of each of our shows was just the person's name. And so it was like episode 93 with Lyndon Amick.
Yeah.
And then part 2, then part 3, and then the next week it would be episode 29 with Bill Elliott, part 1, part 2, part 3. So I had to learn the search engine thing and the phrases and all that kind of thing. Listen, I know how to create content. I know how to do interviews. I'm good at it. I feel like I'm good at doing interviews. But when it comes to the marketing and the sales and the promotion, I am lost. I am clueless. And so that's been a learning process for us and a journey for us. So, getting better at it. And, we've grown over the years. Steve and I used to be real excited about 50 downloads per week. And, now we're doing a little bit better than that. But we changed to a new RSS feed a month or so ago, and that kind of messed things up and lost some numbers and all that kind of thing. But I think it's going to be better for us in the long run. So it'll work out. So
the great Tom Higgins.
Oh yeah,
I've got a book, but it was by him and Steve Wade and Junior Johnson. I think it's about Junior Johnson.
It was by Steve and Tom about Junior, and it was called Junior Johnson Braving Life.
Yeah, and I've got all 3 of them to sign it, by the way. Yeah. So that's cool. I got 2 of them now. One of them was my dad's. But, Tom Higgins I coached his son, or his grandson.
Really?
In baseball. So I got to see him at the baseball field quite a bit.
Pappy.
And I always went up and talked to
Pappy.
him. Yeah. Great
guy. I knew of Tom and Steve when, I was first trying to break into the sport. And Tom had this really gruff shell about him, especially in the media center. And if he was on deadline, you didn't mess with him during deadline. And I as long as I live, I will never forget. I was standing kind of in the foyer of the old Charlotte Media Center, which is now, I think it's now like the first responders station or whatever. It's not the infield care center, but it's where they kind of congregate. But I was standing in like the lobby, and Tom was in the deadline area, and I was talking to somebody, and I laughed out loud. And Tom goes, "Quiet!"
Wow.
And it scared the living crap out of me.
Yeah.
I have ticked off Tom Higgins.
Yeah.
I'm never going to work in this sport. My career is over. But Tom and Steve they were best friends. They were really, really tight. And so, that I feel like I know Tom now because I know Steve. Because Steve, to this day, tells Tom Higgins stories a lot.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I'll have to go and talk to Steve about it at the Stocks for Tots.
Yeah.
And that's where we last saw you down. Well, not last saw you, but anyway, it might have been Stocks for Tots.
Yeah.
And which was another great event.
Yeah. I love doing that. It's kind of funny. You go to something like that, and when you're sitting there and you're signing autographs and all that, you can tell the people who they don't really care about that.
Right.
They don't care about you. They're looking down the line at the big guys, at the big names, and they'll take your card or they'll whatever. But then there are people who actually listen to the podcast, and that's kind of cool. That's gratifying. But I learned a long time ago that you don't get into this business to be a star.
True.
My first book signing, I had visions of, people being lined up around the book Barnes and Noble that we were at, and they were going to have to, direct traffic and all this kind of thing. And I went to the book signing, and one person bought a book.
Oh.
This was my first book signing ever, and
yeah.
I am not ashamed to admit that I drove away from there in tears.
Aw.
Because writing a book is a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of interviewing, a lot of time, and for one person to buy a book that you've worked so hard on, that was big. Yeah.
So out of all your interviews, who would you say that is the one person that you wished you could have interviewed that you didn't get to?
In NASCAR?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say Joe Weatherly, because he seemed very outgoing. He seemed very friendly. So I would probably say Joe Weatherly. But there's Harry Hyde. That would have been an awesome one. So, and as far as NASA goes, you didn't ask this question, but I'm going to answer it anyway.
It was my second part. It was the second part.
One of the flight controllers had been, he ran away from home, and he worked on a merchant marine ship as a tramp steamer before he was even old enough to drive a car. Then he joined the Marines, and he fought in the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir as a teenager. He got really, really bad PTSD. And he wound up killing a Chinese soldier and spending the night in the foxhole with him. And he had really, really bad PTSD. But once he got out of the military and, went to college, and he became one of the prime guys in mission control, and he died a month before I visited the room for the first time. And I would have loved to have interviewed him. His name was John Llewellyn, and the stories about him are they're legendary. He once lost his parking pass at the Johnson Space Center. It was then the Manned Spacecraft Center. He lost his parking pass for something, and so that didn't bother him in the least. He brought his horse trailer and parked it across the street and rode his horse onto the onto MSC property and tied it up outside the Mission Control Center. So yeah, I would have liked to have interviewed him.
Well, there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, that's cool. So there was the award that you got. I was going to find the picture here and put it up on the screen. That you second place is one of your episodes about the LW Wright. That had to be an interesting interview.
Yes, it was. How about the weather?
Yeah, that's fine. We don't have to. Well, here's what you can do: is just say if you want to listen to that interview, go on there and check it out. Tell them where to find it. But
yeah. That's episode 193, LW Wright. And if you don't know the story, LW Wright showed up at Talladega in 1982, and nobody seemed to have heard of him. He ran 13 laps and was too slow, and they black flagged him off the racetrack and then supposedly disappeared. And nobody had interviewed him in 40 years, and I found him and sat down with him. And the process of doing the interview is a book and a movie unto itself. And then the almost a year since then is another book and another movie that has nothing to do with his story. I mean, it's just been incredible. And I still don't know how it's going to turn out. So,
all right.
I remember seeing the tweet about the interview and about the conversation that was coming out. I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be huge.
Yeah. And I will say this. The legend that people think that they know, it doesn't even scratch the surface. Does not even scratch the surface. And I'm not saying that to be mysterious. I'm not saying that to be coy. But the story that people think that they know That's just a drop in the bucket. So, and listen, I wish that I could tell it. I wish that I could shout it from the mountaintops. The podcast that we did, the episode, I talked to, at that time, I had talked to LW for about 2.5 hours on the record, and we included less than 10 minutes on the podcast. And I was told by people that I really respect that I didn't need to throw everything out there. Why write somebody else's book for them? You know, why give it away, like that? And, I've taken some hits for that, but that's okay. Because I trust the people whose counsel that I sought over it. And like I said, I still don't know how it's going to turn out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fair. What was another interview that you did? I mean, that one sounds like it pretty much blew you away, but what's another one that you did that was just like unbelievable?
Pete Wright. Pete worked for Junior Johnson. He was one of their main guys for several years. Then he went and was a crew chief for Hutch Strickland and I think maybe Jimmy Spencer, maybe not, at Travis Carter's, the Smokin' Joe's car. Been in the sport forever and worked for MB2 Motorsports for years. But Pete had a son, Adam, who was killed in a car wreck. And I sat down with Pete, and when you do an interview, you always leave you leave the really tough stuff for the end, that way you can, if he doesn't want to talk about it or, he had told me beforehand that he would be glad to talk about it, but still I wanted to leave it towards the end or for the end, to, save the rest of the interview. But, he talked about his son, and he talked about his son's dog. And he Adam was in a car wreck, and his son's dog was with him in the car and would not let the first responders get to him. And that was really powerful to me. Then he talked about, dealing with everything that happened. And then at he said a month and a half or a month later after, he lost Adam, he and his ex-wife went to Adam's apartment or house or whatever it was to clean it out. And he talked about that. And of course that was tough.
Yeah.
But then he talked about that dog sitting in the driveway, looking down the driveway, waiting for Adam to get home. And you can actually hear me. You can actually hear me on the audio. I have cried during interviews very few times, but that was one of them. And just to top it off, my son's name is Adam. One of my son's names is Adam. So that was. I went straight home and I told Adam. I said, "Listen." And I had the talk with him. I've had it before with him, but that time I said, "Listen, you ever get yourself in a situation, you call me. No questions asked."
Yeah.
The first time.
First time, right?
No questions asked the first time.
Yeah. How old is your son, Adam?
Well, my wife and I have twins, Adam and Jesse, and they are 22 years old.
Okay.
And they are at Appalachian State. Having the times of their lives.
They're both there together?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And then I've got a son from my first marriage whose name is Richard. So. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, good. So, what do you do daily now during the day?
I work on the podcast.
Okay.
It doesn't pay full time.
Sure.
But it is a full-time gig. And I have a process, and I'm comfortable in that process. Steve and I have been in the last couple of months, 2 or 3 months. We have been talking. We've been recording our portions on Sunday afternoon after I get home from church, and then I edit it. I do post-production on Mondays, and then I put the YouTube video together on Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays I start work on the next week's episode. So, yeah.
Yeah. I tried to do that. I mean, as far as making it almost like a full-time thing for me, but I just it's not the right timing right now. I mean, and part of that was trying to make money, take care of my dad and all this stuff. But, everything's about the right timing.
Yeah. And, it's no shame in admitting, my wife has a good job. So, I've always considered my salary the cushion. Mm-hmm. So, that's how we work that.
Yeah, sure.
So,
well, good deal. Good for you. That's what, YouTube's a big thing nowadays. You can make a lot of money. I mean, you can make money. You can make a living. Like, look at Mr. Beast. I mean, we're not. I'm throwing this way out there. We're not ever going to be Mr. Beast. Yeah, $50 million.
Well, Eric Eastep. I mean, he's
doing good.
What, mid to late 20s?
Yeah, in the groove.
Somewhere in there, and he has it going on. Mm-hmm. And there I am sitting in the my little cubby hole at home, and striving for a tenth of what he's getting. Mm-hmm. So I wish that whatever Eric had, he could bottle up and sell it. I would be his first subscriber. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think some of them just got in there super early whenever they,
Yep.
And some of them started in other areas like maybe gaming or something, and they just took off, and they got 100,000 subscribers just like that, and
yeah.
Now
and I know how to create the content.
Yeah.
I know how to do the interviews, but I don't, I'm not very good at packaging it and editing the videos and all that. It's basically very ham and egg. But the interviews and the stories that people tell, they carry it. Mm-hmm. So if I could put my content together with the magic that somebody like Eric has, or the Iceberg, or somebody like that, that would just be a home run for me.
Yeah, that's so. Good. Well, I noticed that I can look at the analytics and see how yours are actually like my top suggested videos. After your videos, then mine comes like I'm drafting behind yours. As far as whenever your video's done, mine might pop up on the screen as a suggested.
Well, here, that has been a lesson that I've had to relearn, and almost by force, because it is a definite culture change. When I was at Winston Cup Scene, you did not share stories.
Correct.
You did not share interviews, period. Like Steve Wade and Tom Higgins, they were buddies, but they were also rivals. And I can't say that, because they worked together on a lot of stuff. And, there are rumors that they wrote each other's stuff for,
Oh, yeah.
But when I was at Scene, you did not share stuff. But now, evidently, the thing is, if you can get on another show and be mentioned on another show, it's a big deal. So being on your show right now, that's a big deal for me.
Great.
And so, when I mentioned that I was on your show, you'll get that exposure.
We should collaborate.
And so, well, how about it, man? Yeah. Figure something out. Well, I'm game, man.
Yeah.
I said no for the last time a long time ago.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's just, I've had to relearn that. Mm-hmm. And, having other people on my show who are, on other podcasts or stuff like that, that's not in my DNA. My DNA is to keep it to myself and to do my own thing and to let people come to me and find me. And that's not the way it works anymore.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
I actually had a chance to go to work for the Charlotte Observer's. The late David Poole once approached me about going to work for the racing website that the Charlotte Observer was starting, called That's Racing. And with my hand to heaven, I told him, no, I'm not interested. Number one, my dream was to work for Winston Cup Scene. But I also thought that internet, there's nothing to that internet. It's a fad. It'll pass. That shows how visionary I am.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So that was not the best career move.
Well, if someone would like to check out your podcast, what do they need to do?
They need to look for the Scene Vault podcast. It is on all the major podcast platforms.
And on YouTube.
iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Amazon. It's all over the place. So it's actually been kind of funny to hear all the places that people do listen. And some of the platforms I've never heard of, So evidently the one feed goes out to everything. I don't know how that works, but it's some kind of magic voodoo that I don't understand.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I use Buzzsprout, and then that puts it out to all the different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just upload it by the 15th of the month. So I got 2 days to upload 3 hours worth of content for my $12 a month. Yes.
There you go.
Scott Beerman says That's Racing was a great website.
Yep.
And speaking of podcasts, I'm going to play this little teaser right here, and y'all let me know if y'all get it, what I'm saying.
And now back with special guest Sterling Marlin on Racing Roots with Ham on 550 and 92.9 WAME.
All right, that's a little teaser for you there, because that's going to happen real soon. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be great. But That's Racing was a great website.
Yep.
Is what Scott
would have
said.
been even. Never mind. I'm not. I can't even say that with a straight face.
He was going to say it'd have been better if he'd have been a part of it.
Well, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
But we won't go there.
Now, you did do some stuff with Dirty Mo Media, right? With the racing stories.
Speaking of not going there.
He's got a twitch.
Oh.
He doesn't know
No, I
what to
did.
say.
I did.
Okay.
I did at one point, but I no longer do that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well,
No, honestly, it was a mutual thing.
Yeah.
It was a mutual thing.
Sorry.
Yes. Jim Dooley said, thanks for letting us know how to listen to the podcast. Great show. So that'd be
deal.
good. Yeah.
Good deal.
Pick up some new friends, and then people will be watching this tomorrow and the next day. That's kind of the way the live thing goes. We have our usual listeners, and people, sometimes they can't catch it live, and then they'll watch it tomorrow, and then YouTube puts it out a little bit, and says we're testing it out. So
Good deal.
yeah. But thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate that. I meant to ask you a long time ago, and I finally got around to asking you, and then a month went by because I got kind of busy with some other thing, my dad, and that kind of stuff. So, but you made it in.
Anytime, man.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Well, maybe we could make it a regular thing. We'll do some collaboration. We'll get
Okay.
together on
All
that
right.
stuff and
Cool.
and get something going there.
All right.
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
And
Blow it out of the park.
yeah, blow it out of the park. Hey, thanks, Kristen, for coming and hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. You got any more on the Facebook or anything? Any comments? Anything?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, good deal. And then there's the young Bryson over here behind me. Let me get this camera over here. You see that? It's, woof.
Yeah, it's been good. I have used the shovel a lot, so I'm sorry for that, because that's about,
All right, youngster.
David's okay loaning it.
All right,
Yeah.
Here's the deal. All right. I want to go ahead and set something up so I can come back. All right. Yeah. The next time I come back, I want a full book report
okay.
on
Okay.
racing history in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, we will get that working. We will work on that. I will. We'll work on that, because apparently I've got a lot to learn. I know I do, and
I mean, Sterling. Ask Sterling
I
about
know.
Ask Sterling if he's ever heard the racetrack.
The Tennessee.
in Nashville.
Sterling, do they race in Nashville? He'd be like, no. Sterling's a Tennessee man too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it's been great to finally meet you and to get to talk with you, and I've really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure, man.
It's been great. So hopefully it won't be too long. We'll see you again.
All right.
Yep.
Good deal.
Same.
All right. Yep. Sounds good, y'all. And we'll see y'all next Monday evening. Figure out who the guest is going to be, and then we'll put it on our social media. Of course, Facebook is the main place that I'll post who's our next week's guest is going to be. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And Scott says, yes, I'll be following Mr. Houston's podcast. Good deal. Thank y'all for that. And we'll see you next time on Racing Roots with Ham. Have a good night.
Real Country 550 and 92.9 WAME and W225BD Statesville.